Good morning. Good morning. Happy Black History Month. My name is Ketty Nivyabandi. I have the honor and privilege to serve as the Secretary General for Amnesty International Canada, English speaking, and we are very grateful to be gathered here on the unceded, unsurrendered territory of the Algonquin and Anishinaabe peoples. We also acknowledge the African ancestors who have shaped and made this country into what it is today, particularly so during this month, as we celebrate the resilience, the brilliance, the fortitude of Black peoples, not only today, but every single day. So I have the pleasure of introducing our distinguished guests who are visiting Canada this week. The United Nations Permanent Forum for People of African Descent. Now, Amnesty International partnered with Black-led organizations and other civil society organizations, the Black Canadian Civil Society Coalition, but a number of other organizations who have made this visit possible, and I really want to thank them. So the Elementary Teachers of Toronto, the Black Opportunity Fund, the Acadia University, the University of Toronto, the University of Ottawa, ANSA, and VANSA have all made this visit, which is so important, possible. Now, behind me are the members of the United Nations Permanent Forum for People of African Descent. They have been in the country this week listening to the aspirations of Black Canadians. They were in Toronto on Monday, they were in Nova Scotia on Tuesday, and they will spend the day, yesterday they engaged with some government officials, and they will spend the day today listening to Black Canadians here in Ottawa. And so you will hear directly from them about the purpose of their visit, the reason why they're here, what they have heard so far, and where this process is going. They are here as part of a consultation for a draft declaration on the rights of Black African people of African descent, and it is a crucial and historic opportunity for the voices of Black Canadians to be heard and to shape that declaration. And so to begin with me, we have Ms. Gaynel Curry, who's the Vice Chairperson of the Forum. She's a law professor at the University of Bahamas and a former UN Gender and Women's Rights Advisor. Also with her is Mr. Michael McEachrane, member of the Forum as well, an international human rights activist and a senior research fellow at the Center for Black European Studies and the Atlantic at the Carnegie Mellon University. Also with us is June Soomer, who's a member of the Forum as well, a diplomat of St. Lucian origin and former Secretary General of the Association of Caribbean States. And also part of the delegation was Mr. Justin Hansford. He's a law professor and executive director, founder of the Thurgood Marshall Civil Rights Center in Washington, D.C. He's not with us today, but he has been part of the delegation throughout the week and will be part of the consultations in Ottawa this morning. So without further ado, I will now pass the floor to Ms. Gaynel Curry, the Vice Chairperson of the Forum, to talk to you about the purpose of their visit.
Thank you, and good morning. It is my pleasure, as Vice Chair of the United Nations Permanent Forum on People of African Descent, to address you in this press conference pursuant to our regional consultation here in Canada on the draft UN Declaration on the promotion, protection, and full respect of the human rights of people of African descent. The Permanent Forum was created in 2021 by the United Nations General Assembly as a consultative mechanism, advisory body, and platform to further the human rights of people of African descent globally. This was in line with the program of activities of the first International Decade for People of African Descent. And as you know, we are now in the second International Decade for People of African Descent. As such, the Permanent Forum was mandated among the responsibilities with reviewing and monitoring progress on the implementation of the Program of Activities of the International Decade, and with contributing to the elaboration of a draft United Nations Declaration on the Human Rights of People of African Descent, also provided for in the Program of Activities. In this regard, and to ensure that this new instrument is firmly grounded in lived realities of people of African descent, the Permanent Forum has embarked on a global effort to solicit views and aspirations of people of African descent through the organization of regional consultations on the draft declaration. This week was our fourth consultation. Previous consultations were held for Latin America and the Caribbean in Barbados, Colombia, and Brazil. Each consultation reflected the diversity of experiences across regions while affirming common calls for recognition, justice, and development for people of African descent. Here in Canada, the Permanent Forum had the privilege to meet with civil society representatives, community leaders, youth advocates, and scholars from various regions of the country. The participants to the consultations shared their experience and struggles, as well as their visions for the declaration. Our discussions centered around the following 5 topics. First, recognizing and addressing systemic and structural racism. Second, reparatory justice for histories and legacies of colonialism, enslavement, apartheid, and genocide. Thirdly, collective rights of persons and peoples of African descent. Fourthly, sustainable development and increasing equality within and among countries. And fifthly, pressing issues and emerging human rights concerns, namely artificial intelligence and digital justice, climate change and environmental injustice, and reform for the international economic order. We are deeply grateful for the invaluable contributions shared during these consultations over the last 2 days, and we look forward to continuing that conversation today. Just as Indigenous peoples in Canada played a vital role in shaping and advancing the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples, Canadians of African descent must and will be core to the development of this draft declaration on the human rights of people of African descent. I would now like to pass the floor to my colleague members of the forum for them to present a few words on their thoughts of the consultation so far. We start with Michael.
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair. Good morning, everyone. Very glad to be here with you. And so my name is Michael McEachrane. I'm one of the members of the Permanent Forum. I think one cannot stress enough the extraordinary times that we live in, where many parts of the world and the international community is backsliding on basic principles of human rights, democracy, the rule of law, international law, of equality and non-discrimination. And this new declaration that we are here to discuss is a tremendous opportunity for the international community to stress and move forward on and create new human rights principles to honor, to respect, protect, and fulfill basic principles of equality and non-discrimination. We have been, very happy about the input that we have received from civil society. We're very grateful to the Canadian civil society, Amnesty International in particular, for making this visit possible. And we're also happy to hear that the Canadian government does recognize that racism and racial discrimination is a systemic issue, is a systemic and structural issue. And this is of a special importance to the declaration as the Permanent Forum sees it, as we have suggested. And this was recommended already in our first recommendation from our first annual report to the General Assembly and the Human Rights Council, that the declaration, that central to the declaration and framing the declaration should be a collective human right of people of African descent to recognition, monitoring, and address of systemic and structural racism and racial discrimination, both within and among countries. And we think that a declaration that properly recognizes such a right would move human rights protection forward on racial discrimination. And this is especially important too, as the General Assembly has already indicated that this declaration should be regarded as a first step towards a new legally binding agreement, that is to say, a new convention. And so far, we have one international convention on racial discrimination, and that is the International Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Racial Discrimination, the ISO that was adopted in 1965, before such terms as institutional, systemic, and structural racism even had been coined. So this declaration offers a great opportunity in this regard, and we are hoping that the Canadian government will involve itself in the drafting of the declaration. The Permanent Forum is quite concerned about the current draft, the latest draft and of the declaration, and we are far from where we need to be with the declaration. So we would encourage also the government to be involved in the drafting and to make sure that a collective right to systemic and structural racism be central to the declaration and frame it. Thanks a lot.
Good morning, everyone. I am June Soomer. I am first a historian, and I am also a member of the Permanent Forum, the immediate past chair. I also sit on the St. Lucia Reparations Commission, the CARICOM Reparations Commission, the African Union Committee of Experts on Reparations, and I am also the chair of the Global Campus of the University of the West Indies. For people of African descent, as we have heard from our very first session at the Permanent Forum, it is very important for us to address the issue of reparatory justice for people of African descent, because we recognize that there can be no development for people of African descent if we do not first repair the damage that was done to us, from enslavement in Africa to the trafficking of people of African descent across the Atlantic, to the chattelized slavery that occurred in the Americas. For us to be able to reach the point of repair, of restoration, and ensuring that people of African descent are restored with dignity and humanity, we must address reparatory justice. The Permanent Forum looks at reparatory justice in all of its dimensions, whether it be climate justice. We heard a lot about climate justice and environmental justice over the last 2 days of our consultations, where people of African descent live in areas they think that are targeted and ensure that environmental degradation they are surrounded by environmental degradation. We have also heard from them with regard to a gendered approach to reparatory justice, that women of African descent, and you can see the legacies now in the fact that globally, women of African descent sit at the bottom of all social statistics, that we should pay special attention to repair with regard to women of African descent. We have also been asked to look at the issues of digital justice, where erasure of people of African descent is very prominent. We have seen erasure with regard to our books and our history. Now we are seeing it within the new and emerging forms of discrimination centered around digital justice. And all of this has to do with development. We think that people of African descent have a right to development. And if we do not first address reparatory justice as demanded by our various constituents, then we will not reach that point where we can talk about sustainable development. I thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, Michael and June. And before I conclude, we would like to extend our sincere appreciation to our civil society partners, including Amnesty International, who supported the organization of these consultations here in Canada. We also acknowledge that the consultations has taken place during Black History Month in Canada, a time to honor the resilience, the contributions and leaderships of people of African descent throughout history, and to recommit to addressing inequalities that persist today. We heard in our consultations quite a bit about issues around land rights and persons who have 9 generations of families of African descent here that want to understand a little bit better about their rights, their collective rights with respect to land. So this is one thing that we need to think about as well, in addition to those that were mentioned by my colleagues. The Permanent Forum, we will continue our consultation process in other regions, and in the meantime, I take this opportunity to announce that the Permanent Forum will meet in its annual session. Will be our 5th session in Geneva from the 14th to the 17th of April in Geneva, Switzerland. We look forward to receiving the usual excellent support and significant numbers of Canadians in the room. I will say that Canada has been an excellent support, I will say, for civil society as well as government, have always been at our sessions supporting the work of the forum. And I want to encourage Canada to continue to do so. We see you as really strong allies in the journey together that we're walking to advance the human rights, the lives and livelihoods of people of African descent. I thank you.
Thank you. And now, if there are any questions online or in person, we'll take those now.
Merci. There are no questions in the room. There's no questions online. So this concludes the press conference. Merci beaucoup. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.